have kind of a rebel theme or a renegade theme. Why is that?
I couldn't tell you that. I mean, I guess that's convenient that you view it that way, since I myself probably fall into the renegade and rebel category of people. But
And your guests do.
yeah, that's true. I mean, they definitely are a lot of people who are challenging the status quo and looking at the world in a very different way. And I think that that's awesome because, I mean, what all this technology has done is enable a way for us to create things that we could never create before. And, I talk to students sometimes, and I think sometimes the wrong question gets asked. It's like, okay, how do I use all this technology to find a job? And my other question to them is, it's like I would say, the more valuable question is, how do I use all this technology so I never have to have a job? That to me is a better question to ask and could lead to more interesting outcomes.
I think that's a really interesting way to look at it. I think that jobs are just an outgrowth of the industrial economy.
Hmm.
And I think Seth Godin said that in your interview with him. And I
Yeah, he
think
did.
that's where I got that from.
Hmm.
What was it like interviewing Seth?
Well, I waited almost 3 years to interview Seth, and I'm really glad I did, because I knew that by the time I interviewed Seth, I was ready to interview Seth. Because I had, one of the things I had in mind was a personal goal. I said, you know what, I want this to be different than all the interviews he's ever done. I want it to stand out from a lot of the other ones. And that was a tough goal because Seth has been interviewed by hundreds, if not thousands of people. Uh, and so, sort of, looking at that, I will say this: what's interesting is for a guy who is as famous as he is, and as well known as he is, and respected as he is, he's the most humble, down to earth person. And one of the things he said, he's like, I don't want to be put on this pedestal in any way at all, or like something along those lines. And so, and the entire time, of course, I'm thinking this has to be good. It has to be good. Of course, you don't want to get so far into that thought pattern that you're not present. But I mean, I knew that even with Seth, I was like, okay, you know what? David told me one thing specifically. He said, look, he's like, I know you're going to be tempted to change things up with Seth. He said, do what you always do because it works. And he said, and that's what makes you different is that you're able to do things the way you do them. And so, I did change one or two things. I changed the introduction a little bit, and then I built from there. But I think with Seth, I think the thing is that he is so smart on a level. I mean, and he's so articulate on a level that so few people are that it was really honestly one of the coolest experiences I think I've had in terms of show guests. I really like because I mean I think to a lot of us Seth is kind of a hero, right? We look at him and we say, wow, he's got guts to do a lot of things. I mean, honestly, that interview didn't offer tactics, which I really thought was eye-opening, but it was sort of a way of looking at the online world to do things in a different way. And I mean, there were so many brilliant insights in that. Like, you could expand on each one of them and probably do a blog post.
Yeah. So, what was the best part of the interview for you?
Um, that's a hard question, but I will say this. One of the things that really sort of struck a chord with me is the whole idea of doing things that might not work. And that to me was like, wow, I mean, everything I do might not work. And I'm realizing, well, if everything I do might not work, I should probably just do more of it, right? Because here's the thing, everything it might not work, but it's not guaranteed to not work, I mean, interviews with up and coming bloggers might not have worked. It just did, and so every single blog post you put out or every single thing you try might not work, but the thing is you won't know if it does or not until you try it. And so it was almost like a sort of it was liberating in ways to say, you know what, I've got all these cool products or projects I want to attempt. And who cares? Because one of the things that I think really kind of opened my eyes is that our sort of labels on failure are that failure is this fatal, awful thing. But God, I mean, like how many failures have so many of these bloggers had, or so many of these people had before they launched their thing? Like, I mean, before Blogcast FM, there were like 5 or 6 blogs that completely bombed, and we've had product launches that did not do well at all. I mean, we that's why we've waited a long time before we did anything else. We wanted to make sure that we've really regained the trust of our audience and said, you know what, we deliver and we will deliver. And of course, we've learned to start trying things and be more open about experiments, and that's really to me what I think was probably one of the biggest takeaways from it.
Yeah. So, What did you do before Blogcast FM? How many attempts did you have before you had things working?
Okay, so I was Intuit's social media intern the summer between my first and second year of business school. And there I was sort of dabbling with blogs and content creation. I started a website called mymbainternship.com my first year of business school, which I haven't talked about this in an interview actually, surprisingly. The reason I started it was because I needed a solution to my own problem. I went to a school where nobody recruited, and it was really frustrating. So I thought, okay, well, I can't be the only one with this problem. There's hundreds of other unknown MBA programs or lesser known MBA programs where companies don't come. So let me start this website, and I'll basically compile all the listings of MBA internships from various sites. And it kind of flopped. I had a falling out with the partner that I was working with on it. It didn't do well, and of course the design was horrendous. Like, I did all sorts of things wrong with it. I mean, I did everything you could possibly do wrong. Like, I didn't understand how to create content for it, but it was enough to get me in the door into it because it didn't seem like I was just screwing around. Like, I took initiative and I did something, and I failed at it. Then I started another blog about my internship. It was just a blogger blog. And then I started another one called Biz School Blog. And finally, I started this site called 100reasonsyoushouldhireme.com, which was really nothing more than the bullet points on my resume in blog form, which also failed. And then that led to the School of Life, where I finally decided to join a blogging course. I was like, okay, this is, I'll pay for this. And I realized when you pay for things, you take them more seriously. And so from that point forward, I started to get a lot more serious. I started to read the right blogs. I started to look at what worked. And bit by bit, I sort of built from there. And then, of course, I've had the ultimate edge in a lot of ways, in that I get to talk to the most successful people who do this. And, of course, every one of them has shaped my perspective in one way or another. But, again, I like, compared to a lot of our guests, I'm nowhere near as successful as they are.
Alright, I hope you enjoyed this video, and be sure to like, share, and comment below. Subscribe to this channel for more interviews, and if you want to go further and be live on the interviews, you can go to mmt.tv/live to find out how. Like on Facebook and follow on Twitter to ask your questions, and be sure to get on the mailing list. Go to mmt.tv to get access to all the things that are not contained in these interviews. All the links are mentioned below, and until next time, break the rules, change the game, and be a rock star.